When the Trump administration took office and kicked off a flurry of executive orders throwing federal money, our federal workforce, and our civil rights into jeopardy, this body responded by standing up our Select Committee on Federal Administration and Policy Changes to understand what these impacts mean for our city. And month after month, we've learned in committee about what's happening with things like housing construction, concerns about Medicaid reimbursement, the state of gender-based violence services, immigration and legal defense, labor protections, changes in SNAP, and the increasing need that we're seeing at food banks and meal programs. The Trump administration's actions since taking office this year have eliminated any sense of stability or predictability for our businesses and have eliminated or attempted to eliminate whole categories of support for cities like Seattle. Those economic uncertainties and those real and expected federal funding cuts paired with the existing structural challenges have made planning our city's budget harder than usual. We've built the Seattle Shield Initiative as a well-researched, thoroughly stakeholders and strongly vetted response to this constellation of challenges. Today, we will vote on whether to send this more progressive rebalancing of our B&O tax to the voters. Once the voters provide us with this tool, we can ensure that critical city services are maintained despite the challenges our budget or the Trump administration present.
You know, I agree that we had a budget deficit before this current administration unleashed its attacks on our residents, which have impacted our immigrants and refugees, health care, reproductive care, and everything in between, food access and everything in between. I will say that with our budget deficit, like I said, it got compounded by this current administration's unleashed terror. And as everyone knows, early on this year, I talked about Seattle being a sanctuary city and really responding to our residents. So in that regard, I will be supporting this proposal because I want to make sure that we have the funding available to protect our much needed services from our own deficit and from the further compounding of negative impacts brought about by the federal government. And I will say that I will continue to push for budget reform at the city so we are not in this constant state of deficit. It is really unacceptable, and it is bad governance for us to be in a constant deficit because we don't want to take a hard look at our budget and our programs and really do that work that it takes to figure out whether these programs are actually doing what they're intending to do. And so we really need to do that work. This does not take the place of that work. It is not okay to constantly bring about more, taxes of this nature without doing the work. And before anyone misquotes me, I am not saying that we should not be bringing taxes. That's how the government gets their money to do what they need to do on behalf of the people and for the people, because this is not for us, this is for the residents. And good governance is we need to take a look at our budget and not have the knee-jerk reaction of every time that we are in this deficit situation. Instead of looking at the programs, we automatically go to how can we backfill in a different way. And I also am mindful about the lack of transparency sometimes that we have as we're taking these votes. And as new information comes in that shows that the situation is not as bad as it is, we all got today our revenue forecast that the forecast is actually better than we had anticipated by $90 million. $90 million, which is actually coincidentally the very $90 million that is in this B&O proposal. So we need to make sure that we are doing our due diligence when we are budgeting. And Councilmember Kettle, I'm in agreement with you on that. As we are putting these proposals forward, we do have funding sources from many different areas.
The first is about timing, and I mentioned this last week. This was a rush process. We are talking about completely restructuring the way we charge B&O taxes, which makes up about a third of our general fund revenue and could have a pretty profound impacts on our economy and most importantly, jobs. That's what I'm always thinking about is jobs. And this has limited the, and this is all going on right when we are trying to deliberate on the comp plan. We're in the middle of that, and we had a council vacancy and everything else moving through the budget, the select budget committee, in addition to all of the legislation that we're trying to wrap up in our individual committees before recess and budget. So this is very unfortunate because it has impacted or minimized the amount of time that we can do outreach to our to the people that will be impacted, the nonprofits and businesses of all sizes that will be impacted by some of these changes in positive and potentially negative ways. And that's just, I feel, irresponsible because we do have to do this work. So I will just, I tried to do as much outreach as I could. I did reference some of the positions of small business associations, but for something that's critical, we really do want to make sure we get it right and minimize the unintended consequences.
Councilmember Rivera?
Aye.
Councilmember Salka?
Aye.
Councilmember Solomon?
Aye.
Councilmember Strauss?
Aye.
Councilmember Hollingsworth?
Yes.
Councilmember Juarez?
Aye.
Councilmember Kettle?
Aye.
Councilmember Rink?
Yes.
Council President Nelson?
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.